The jungle enveloped me like a living shroud, the humid air thick with the scent of earth and life. My heart raced as I moved through the towering trees, each step deliberate and confident. Varek, my majestic white tiger, prowled silently beside me, his luminous eyes scanning the underbrush for any sign of movement. Together, we were a force to be reckoned with, a warrior and her beast, feared and respected across the galaxy. Suddenly, a rustle in the foliage snapped my attention. My instincts kicked in, and I crouched low, signaling to Varek to stay alert. I could hear them, the snarls and growls of a pack of hostile creatures, their eyes glinting like shards of glass in the dappled sunlight. They were closing in, driven by hunger and aggression. I could feel the tension in the air, a palpable energy that ignited my senses. "Stay close, Varek," I whispered, the bond between us a silent promise of protection. He responded with a low growl, his muscles tensing as he prepared for the impending confrontation. As the creatures lunged from the shadows, I sprang into action. My combat skills honed through years of survival kicked in, and I moved with a fluid grace that felt second nature. I dodged to the left, narrowly avoiding the snapping jaws of the nearest beast. With a swift motion, I drew my blade, its shimmering edge catching the light as I swung it with precision. The first creature fell, a howl escaping its lips as it crumpled to the ground. "One down," I shouted, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I turned to face the rest of the pack. Varek pounced, his powerful form a blur of white and muscle as he took down another attacker. The two of us fought in seamless harmony, a dance of death against the backdrop of the jungle. The battle raged on, but with each foe that fell, I felt a flicker of hope. The whispers of fear that surrounded my name were nothing compared to the strength that came from this bond. Varek and I were not just a warrior and her beast. We were a single entity, united against all odds. When the last of the creatures lay defeated, I took a moment to catch my breath. My chest heaved, and sweat trickled down my brow, but a sense of triumph surged within me. I turned to Varek, who stood proudly, his fur glistening in the sun. "We did it, my friend," I said, a smile breaking through the exhaustion. He approached, nuzzling against my side, and I felt a wave of warmth spread through me. In this chaotic world, he was my anchor. Yet, as I surveyed the battlefield, a familiar shadow settled over my heart. The galaxy buzzed with tales of the fearsome warrior and her beast, stories told in hushed tones around campfires and in darkened taverns. I was a legend, but at what cost? I longed for connection, for someone who could see beyond the fear and the reputation. My solitary existence weighed heavily on me, a constant reminder of the distance I kept from the rest of the universe. Will I ever find someone who understands? I murmured, my voice barely a whisper. Varek tilted his head, as if sensing my turmoil. I knew the answer lay somewhere beyond the jungle, perhaps even beyond the stars, but doubt clouded my vision. Meanwhile, as my thoughts swirled, a distant rumble echoed through the sky, a sound foreign to this world. I looked up just in time to see a streak of light crashing through the atmosphere, illuminating the treetops before disappearing somewhere in the dense foliage. My heart raced again, this time with a mix of intrigue and trepidation. Another foolhardy explorer? I mused aloud, my curiosity piqued. The galaxy had seen many like them, driven by ambition and a reckless thirst for adventure. I had always watched from the shadows, a guardian of my realm, but something about this seemed different. Could this be the connection I had longed for? With Varek at my side, I resolved to investigate. The jungle was alive, and perhaps today, fate had decided to draw a new player onto the stage. Little did I know, this encounter would change everything, challenging the very essence of my existence and the boundaries I had placed around my heart. The jungle around me was a vibrant tapestry of colors and sounds, a symphony of life that thrummed beneath my feet. I had seen countless explorers before, their eyes wide with fear and wonder, but none had ever dared to remain still in the face of my presence. As I stepped through the dense underbrush, Varek's powerful form loomed beside me, his white fur glistening in the dappled sunlight that broke through the canopy above. When I caught sight of the human, he was standing there, rooted to the spot, a mix of curiosity and confidence radiating from him. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice steady and commanding. "You've trespassed on my land." "Ethan," he replied, taking a step forward, his eyes locked with mine. There was no tremor in his voice, no hint of fear. "I'm an explorer. I mean you no harm." The words hung in the air between us, and I couldn't help but feel the stirrings of intrigue. Most beings would have turned and fled at the sight of me, but he stood firm. An explorer? I echoed, my brow furrowing. You think you can simply wander into my territory? I didn't come to invade, he said, raising his hand slightly, palms out, as if to show he bore no weapons. I came to discover. This planet, it's incredible. Varek growled lowly beside me, his muscles taut and ready for action. I could sense his agitation, and yet something in Ethan's demeanor held me back. Incredible. I scoffed, stepping closer, my eyes narrowing. You call danger incredible? This jungle is alive, and it does not welcome the weak. I'm not weak, he replied, his voice steady. I've faced danger before. I've sailed through storms, explored uncharted territories. I can handle myself. The challenge in his voice ignited a spark of curiosity within me. Is that so? I stepped even closer, my gaze piercing. Prove it. Before he could respond, I lunged forward, a blur of speed and agility. I aimed to test his resolve, to see if he truly had the mettle he claimed. But instead of flinching or attempting to escape, he remained unmoved. I'm not here to fight you, he shouted, the intensity of his voice cutting through the tension. I'm here to explore, to learn. I halted mid-attack, my body poised, ready for whatever might come next. Varek, sensing my hesitation, relaxed slightly but remained on guard. You speak of learning as if it's a game, I said, my voice low and steady. This is not a game. This is survival. I understand that, Kira, he said, his tone suddenly softer, more genuine. I've read stories about you and Varek. The fear you inspire, it's impressive, but I'm not afraid. I want to understand. His words struck a chord within me, resonating in the deepest parts of my being. You know my name? I asked, surprised. Of course, he replied, his gaze unwavering. You're a legend. The warrior and her beast. But legends can be misunderstood. I want to know the truth. I stood there, contemplating his words. What did I have to lose by allowing him to accompany me? My heart raced with the thrill of the unknown. Very well, I finally said, lowering my stance. You may join me, but heed my warning. Stay close, and do not betray my trust. Ethan's face lit up with a mix of relief and excitement. Thank you. I promise, I won't let you down. Let's see if you can keep that promise, I replied, motioning for him to follow. With a nod, he fell into step beside me. As we ventured deeper into the jungle, I could feel the weight of this uneasy alliance settling around us, a fragile thread binding our fates together. Varek walked beside us, his watchful eyes assessing this new companion, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this human was not just another threat but the beginning of something new. The humid air was thick as we navigated through the jungle's treacherous terrain. I could hear the distant calls of exotic creatures, the rustle of leaves signaling movement, and the soft patting of Varek's paws beside me. Despite the looming danger, a sense of camaraderie started to blossom between Ethan and me. I glanced at him, his eyes wide with wonder, and I felt an unexpected warmth in my chest. Watch your step, I warned, gesturing to the gnarled roots jutting out from the ground. They can trip you if you're not careful. Ethan chuckled lightly, brushing a leaf from his shoulder. I've faced worse in space. Just the other day, I had to outsmart a sentient cloud of gas trying to suffocate me. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. A gas cloud? You humans do have a peculiar way of finding trouble. It's a talent, he replied with a grin, his spirit infectious as we pressed on. Suddenly, a low growl reverberated through the trees, halting us in our tracks. Varek tensed, his muscles coiling like springs. I could feel the adrenaline surging through me as I prepared for a fight. What was that? Ethan asked, his voice dropping to a whisper, eyes darting around. A predator, I said, scanning the shadows. Stay close to me. Before I could finish my sentence, a massive creature lunged from the thicket, a beast with glistening scales and razor-sharp teeth. Its eyes locked onto us, hungry and predatory. Get back. I shouted, instinctively stepping in front of Ethan. Ethan didn't hesitate. I can help, he insisted, grabbing a fallen branch, his face set with determination. Stay behind me, I commanded, but I could see the fire in his eyes. I was used to fighting alone, but at that moment, I felt a strange pull to let him be part of this battle. As the creature lunged, I ducked and rolled to the side, Varek leaping forward to meet it head-on. I swung my blade, aiming for the creature's vulnerable underbelly. With a swift motion, I struck true, but it only enraged the beast further. It turned its fury on Varek, jaws snapping dangerously close to his flank. "Ethan!" I shouted, my heart racing. "Now!" Ethan charged forward, swinging the branch with all his might, striking the creature across the side. It roared in pain, momentarily distracted. Seizing the opportunity, I leaped onto its back, my blade poised to strike again. Together, we fought in synchrony, Ethan's courage surprising me. He wasn't just a human explorer, he was a partner in this moment. With a final thrust of my blade, I plunged it deep into the creature's neck, and it fell to the ground with a thud. Panting, I slid off its back and turned to find Ethan staring at me, his expression a mix of awe and exhilaration. "You're incredible," he breathed out, wiping sweat from his brow. "It was teamwork," I replied, my heart still pounding from the adrenaline. "You fought well. I didn't expect you to hold your ground." "I've always believed in facing danger head-on," he said, a smile breaking across his face. "And besides, I didn't want to be the first human to die at the hands of a jungle monster." We shared a laugh, the tension of the moment dissipating. I felt a shift within me. This human was unlike any I had encountered. As we took a moment to catch our breath, I led him to a nearby riverbank, where the water glittered under the filtered sunlight. "Let's rest here for a moment," I suggested, noticing the fatigue in his eyes. As we settled by the water, Ethan began to share stories of Earth, captivating me with tales of his adventures and explorations. I listened intently as he spoke of vast oceans, towering mountains, and cities that sparkled like stars. "On Earth, we have something called the Grand Canyon," he explained, his eyes alight with the memory. "It's this massive gorge carved by a river over millions of years. You can see layers of rock that tell a story of time." I leaned closer, utterly fascinated. "Time. It's a strange concept. We measure it by the seasons here, by the cycles of the moons." "Yeah, but time is also about moments," he said, his gaze steady on me. "Like this one right now." Before I could respond, a sudden rustle shattered our peaceful moment. My instincts kicked in, heart racing as I turned to face the source of the sound. "Stay behind me," I ordered, scanning the dense foliage for any signs of danger. Just as I did, a group of figures emerged from the shadows, raiders, their eyes glinting with malice. My heart sank. We were outnumbered. "Run!" I yelled to Ethan, positioning myself protectively in front of him. "Get to safety." But there was no turning back now. My loyalty to him ignited an unyielding fire within me, and I would fight to protect this connection we had just begun to forge. The aftershock of the raider attack hung in the air like a thick fog, each breath I took feeling heavier than the last. I crouched low beside a fallen log, my heart racing not just from the adrenaline but from the realization of how close I had come to losing Ethan. He was still catching his breath, the remnants of fear etched on his face, but there was something else too, admiration. I could see it in the way his eyes sparkled with unspoken words, and for the first time, I found myself wanting to hear them. "Your strength is incredible," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor of the jungle around us. "I've never seen anyone fight like that." I turned to face him, studying the way his tousled hair caught the slivers of moonlight filtering through the canopy. "You stood your ground, Ethan. Most would have run. Why didn't you?" His lips curved into a small smile, one that seemed to light up his entire face. "I guess I'm just not wired that way. I came here to explore, and I'm not about to let fear dictate my journey." My heart fluttered. In a galaxy filled with whispers of fear surrounding my name, here was a human who saw strength rather than a threat. "You're unlike anyone I've ever met," I admitted, the words tumbling out before I could think to hold them back. "Maybe that's a good thing," he replied, a hint of mischief in his tone. "You might just need a little human perspective." I chuckled, the sound breaking some of the tension that had gripped me since the attack. "Perhaps. But be warned, I'm not an easy companion." "I wouldn't have it any other way," he said, his gaze unwavering. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, we decided to set up camp. I gathered some leaves and branches to create a makeshift shelter while Ethan worked on a small fire. I found myself watching him more than I intended, the way he moved with purpose, his determination palpable. Once the fire crackled to life, we sat across from each other, the warmth enveloping us. I could feel the jungle's pulse around us, but for the first time, it felt like a backdrop rather than a threat. "Tell me about your home," I prompted, leaning forward. What is Earth like? Ethan's eyes lit up. Earth is beautiful in its own way. Vast oceans, towering mountains, forests that stretch for miles. But it's not just the landscapes, it's the people. They're complex, full of dreams and fears. It's a place where adventure waits around every corner. What do you dream of? I asked, curious about this human who dared to wander into my world. He paused, his expression shifting to something more serious. I dream of understanding and exploring cultures beyond my own. There's so much to learn, so many stories to uncover. I want to bridge the gaps between worlds. I nodded, feeling a connection forming between us, threads of understanding weaving tighter. You're brave, Ethan, far braver than most warriors I know. You seek knowledge rather than conquest. Isn't that what true strength is? He replied, and I could see the sincerity in his eyes. As we shared more about our lives, I told him of my childhood, the training that had molded me into the warrior I was today, how Varric had been my companion since I could remember. He's not just my protector, he's my family, I confessed, memories flooding back of our days spent racing through the jungle, the bond we shared unbreakable. Ethan listened intently, nodding as I spoke. Family is important, he said softly. It's the people who stand by you when the world gets tough. Just as I was about to respond, a shiver ran down my spine. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I instinctively reached for my weapon. Something's not right, I whispered, scanning the surroundings. Ethan followed my lead, his eyes darting to the shadows that seemed to stretch and shift unnaturally. What do you sense? I could feel it, a presence lurking just beyond the edges of our firelight. We're not alone, I murmured, my instinct screaming that danger was close. Ethan nodded, his expression turning serious. What do we do? Stay close to me, I instructed, feeling the weight of my protective instinct surge within me. And be ready. As the jungle held its breath around us, I knew that whatever lay in the shadows, we would face it together. My heart raced, not just with fear, but with a growing sense of purpose. In this wild, unpredictable world, perhaps I had found not just an ally, but something far deeper. The line between warrior and explorer had begun to blur, and I was ready to see where it would lead us. As we wandered deeper into the jungle, the dense foliage began to part, revealing an ancient structure cloaked in vines and moss. The air was thick with humidity, and the scent of damp earth filled my nostrils. I glanced at Ethan, whose eyes sparkled with wonder as he approached the temple. "Kira, look at this!" he exclaimed, pointing to intricate carvings on the stone walls. I stepped closer, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The carvings depicted fierce warriors and majestic beasts, their forms intertwined in a dance of power and unity. But what caught my attention was a particular image, a warrior with a striking resemblance to me, standing alongside a great white tiger. This is us," I murmured, tracing my fingers over the weathered stone. Ethan leaned in, his brow furrowed in concentration as he examined the details. "It looks like a prophecy," he said slowly, his voice filled with awe. "A warrior and a beast destined to unite and bring peace to the planet." Peace. I echoed, the word foreign on my tongue. My life had been dictated by conflict, by survival. How can a warrior and a beast bring peace? He turned to me, his expression earnest. "Maybe it means that together, we can overcome the darkness. We're already doing that by facing these challenges together." His words ignited a flicker of hope within me, a feeling I had long buried beneath layers of distrust and solitude. Before I could respond, a chill swept through the air, causing the hairs on the back of my neck to stand on end. I turned sharply, scanning the shadows that danced around us. "Something is not right," I said, instinctively moving closer to Varric, who stood alert by my side. Suddenly, from the shadows, a figure emerged. Tall and imposing, he bore an aura of menace that sent a shiver down my spine. "Kira," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "I've finally found you." "Zoran," I spat, the name bitter on my lips. He was a warlord known for his ruthlessness, a predator who thrived on fear. "What do you want?" He stepped forward, eyes gleaming with greed. "You possess power beyond imagination, and I intend to harness it. Hand yourself over, and perhaps I'll let your precious beast live." He gestured toward Varric, who growled lowly, ready to pounce. "Never." I shouted, fury boiling within me. Varric was more than just a companion. He was my heart, my soul. I would not let this monster take him from me. You'll have to kill me first. The corners of Zoran's mouth curled into a sinister smile. Oh, I plan to. His hand moved swiftly, and before I could react, he unleashed a net that ensnared Varek, binding him tightly. The tiger roared in defiance, but the more he struggled, the tighter the net became. Varek! I cried out, reaching for him, but Zoran stepped between us. Surrender, Kira, or I will end him right here. My heart raced, the weight of his threat pressing down on me. You won't get away with this, I hissed, my voice trembling with rage and desperation. Oh, but I already have, Zoran replied, his confidence infuriating. You're nothing without your beast. What are you without him? His words clawed at my heart, but I refused to show weakness. I clenched my fists, drawing on the fury that surged through me. You underestimate us, Zoran. I will not let you take him. You will pay for this betrayal. Ethan, who had remained silent in shock, finally stepped forward, determination etched on his face. Kira, we can't let him win. We'll find a way to save Varek. I nodded, bolstered by his support. We will fight together, no matter the odds. Zoran scoffed, dismissing our resolve. You think you can challenge me? You're a fool. But as I looked into Ethan's eyes, I felt a surge of strength. Together, we would not only face Zoran but also confront the destiny that awaited us. The prophecy carved into the temple echoed in my mind, urging me to fight for what mattered most: Varek, our bond, and the hope of peace we could bring to this chaotic world. As the moonlight filtered through the dense canopy of the jungle, casting an otherworldly glow on the vibrant foliage, Ethan and I crouched behind a massive root system, the air thick with tension. The fortress of Zoran loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the starlit sky, fortified with walls that glimmered ominously. Varek, my majestic white tiger, stood beside me, his ears perked, every muscle coiled in readiness. I can't believe we're actually doing this, Ethan whispered, glancing at me with a mix of excitement and apprehension. I could feel the pulse of adrenaline coursing through me, a familiar companion in moments like these. Fear is a luxury we cannot afford, I replied, my voice steady, though my heart raced. We need to be swift and silent. Zoran won't expect us, but we can't underestimate him. Right. So what's the plan? Ethan asked, his brow furrowed in concentration. I admired his determination. He was unlike anyone I had ever encountered. We'll create a distraction, I said, my mind racing with possibilities. Varek can lure the guards away. Once they're occupied, we slip inside and find Varek. Ethan nodded, his eyes brightening with the thrill of the challenge. I'll cover you while you make the distraction. Just tell Varek to be careful. I placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, grounding myself in the moment. He always is. Trust him. With a swift motion, I signaled to Varek. He understood immediately, his instincts sharp as he melted into the shadows. I watched him vanish, my heart swelling with pride and worry. Ethan and I moved closer to the fortress, our footsteps light on the soft earth. Moments later, a commotion erupted on the opposite side of the fortress, a cacophony of shouts and roars. I could see shadows moving, the guards rushing towards the sound. Now! I whispered urgently to Ethan. We dashed forward, slipping through a narrow opening in the fortress wall. Inside, the air was stale and heavy, the walls adorned with dark tapestries that whispered of Zoran's cruel reign. Which way? Ethan asked, glancing down the dimly lit corridor. Follow me, I commanded, leading him deeper into the heart of the fortress. Every step felt like a gamble, the tension coiling tighter as we approached the main chamber. Suddenly, we heard a low growl echoing through the halls, and my heart sank. Varek! I exclaimed, and without thinking, I sprinted toward the sound, Ethan on my heels. As we turned a corner, we stumbled into the main chamber, where Zoran stood, a cruel smile plastered across his face. Ah, the fierce warrior and her little human pet, he mocked, his voice dripping with disdain. You're too late. Your precious beast is mine. Let him go. I shouted, my voice a fierce roar that resonated within the stone walls. Zoran laughed, his eyes glinting with malice. And what will you do if I refuse? You think you can defeat me? You're just a girl with a tiger. Varek is more than a tiger, Ethan interjected, stepping forward, his voice steady. And together, we're more than just a girl and her beast. Zoran's laughter faded, replaced by a look of confusion. At that moment, Varek lunged from the shadows, a blur of white and muscle. He struck Zoran with a force that sent the warlord sprawling. "Now, Ethan!" I shouted, and without hesitation, he joined the fray, tackling Zoran to the ground. The fight was chaotic. Zoran struggled against both Varek and Ethan, but together we overpowered him, my rage and Ethan's unyielding bravery combining in a force that Zoran could not withstand. As Zoran lay defeated, I glared down at him, breathing heavily. "You will never threaten my home again." Ethan offered me a triumphant grin, one filled with exhilaration and relief. We did it. The moment felt surreal as we stood there, victorious. I turned to Varek, who nuzzled against my side, his presence a comfort. "You were incredible," I whispered, and he let out a soft purr, as if he understood every word. "Together we're unstoppable," Ethan said, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. As Zoran was taken away, the realization of what we had accomplished settled in. I looked up at the stars, the vastness of the galaxy stretching before me, and felt a warmth spreading in my chest. "Ethan," I said softly, "I think our destinies are intertwined." He stepped closer, a hesitant smile on his lips. "I'd like to believe that too." In that moment, I closed the distance between us, and we embraced, a bond forged in the fires of battle and trust. As I pulled back, I could see the reflection of the stars in his eyes, and I knew that this was just the beginning. Love, trust, and a future filled with possibilities awaited us as we stood together, ready to face whatever came next.